Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about lust and how some men in the Bible fell victim to it and how others were able to fight it and how you can fight and master it yourselves. Lust is something I have struggled with for a long time. I remember watching graphic videos on VHS tapes back when I was in middle school, way back in the early 2000s. And even on the internet, when we finally brought a computer into our home. It's been a struggle. I also used to be a partier in college and had my share of casual encounters with women in my 20s and early 30s. However, after I've been saved and baptized into Christ, the battle has gotten a lot easier. I gave up watching explicit movies online and the things that come along with it. Now let's get into some biblical stories about lust. In the book of Genesis, we see when Joseph was a servant in Potiphar's house. Potiphar's wife lusted after him and tried to get him to bed her on many attempts. However, Joseph was strong enough to resist her up until the point he got thrown into prison because she accused him of rape. However, he did not do it, but God would bless him with the kingdom of Egypt later on in life. And in that blessing, he would be able to bless his family to be able to survive the famine that was going on in the land. Joseph was one of the few people that was able to resist lust. However, other men of God weren't able to resist. In the book of Judges, Samson, one of God's judges and strongest man on earth, lusted after women. Even though the Spirit of God was on Samson, and he had blessed him with supernatural strength, as long as he didn't cut his hair. However, Samson fell victim to a woman named Delilah, who manipulated him into telling her the secret to his strength. She asked him on many occasions the source of his strength, and each time he would lie to her, and she would summon the Philistines to wait for him in her room to try to capture him. But each time they would be unsuccessful. However, she kept pestering him until he finally got tired of it. He finally told her that if his hair was cut, he would lose his strength, which she then told the Philistines, and they managed to capture and blind him. And this is one way in which lust can trap and bind you, and even destroy you. Then there was King David, who was in his palace when his country was at war. He went out to his rooftop and saw Bathsheba bathing on her rooftop. He sent people to find out about her, and he learned who she was, and that she was married to a man named Uriah, a man that served in his army. And even after finding this out, he still wanted to sleep with her. So he had messengers sent over to her to bring her to the palace. And when she got to the palace, they slept together, and she ended up getting pregnant. David then brings her husband Uriah back from war to get him to sleep with his wife and to try to trick him into thinking that he got her pregnant. However, Uriah never sleeps with his wife. He feels guilty that his fellow soldiers are still at war while he is at home. Then David tries to get him drunk so that he will sleep with Bathsheba, but he still doesn't do it. So David then sends a message to Joab, one of his higher ranking officers, to put Uriah on the front lines to be killed. Joab complies and has Uriah sent to the front lines where he is killed. God then punished David by killing the first son that him and Bathsheba had birth. As you can see from some of these examples of men that weren't able to control their lust, they let it get the best of them and were punished in some way because of it. This is why it's important to master it. And with Jesus, you don't have to fight it alone. If you are filled with the Holy Spirit, you can fight against lust, just as I have. And this is coming from someone that used to watch explicit content almost every day since I was 19 years old, up until I was 35 years old. And here's how I fought it. First, I would go a day without watching it. Then, after I broke, the next day, I bumped it up to a week. And whenever I felt tempted during that week, I would pray and the temptation would subside. Then after a week, I would break and watch it again. Afterwards, I set a goal for 2 weeks. And same thing, I would pray and resist, and finally broke after the 2 weeks. And then I went for 3 weeks. And at the end of the 3 weeks, I was stronger and could resist the temptations. However, that 3 weeks would then become 2.5 years. And as of November 2023, when I gave it up and haven't watched explicit content or engaged in the behavior that comes with it since then. So, if I can master it, so can you. And here are some scriptures to help you along this journey. There's Proverbs chapter 6, verse 25. Don't lust in your heart for her beauty, or let her captivate you with her eyelashes. There's Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And then there's James chapter 4, verse 7. Therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. And these are just some scriptures that you can go over in your battle against lust. Anyways, that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and God bless.